Berserk is one of the most legendary manga series of all time, with some of the most impactful and well-written characters that need no introduction. These characters make an impact and show us the best and worst of human nature. Some characters display aspects of integrity and honesty, while other characters entice us and we ponder upon facets of their mysterious lore. Pick any character in Berserk and it's more than likely that you'll be able to associate them with a certain characteristic. Corcus was important to Berserk, but on a surface level he could be seen as obnoxious. Pippin was a true gentle giant, always strong and silent, acting as a backbone of the Band of the Hawk. And the King of Midland was absolutely disgusting, you piece of rubbish, go f*** yourself. Excuse me. But out of all the hundreds of characters in Berserk, there is one in particular who comes across as rather unimportant and inconsequential to the overall story. If you haven't already seen the thumbnail, of course, I'm talking about Gaston. Now, who is Gaston? Every time we see him among the raiders, he's just another face in the crowd. Even in his final moments, he describes himself as a minor character. So, does he even matter? I mean, let's be honest, Gaston isn't the most complex character. He doesn't provide the reader with much to take away. He wasn't the smartest, he wasn't the strongest. Heck, he wasn't even a Hawk commander. Even Corcus was a Hawk commander, okay? So if Gaston can't even measure up to be a discount Corcus, then what hope do we have for this character? Now this begs the question, why would I be talking about Gaston when there are other important and interesting characters, some of which who can literally bend reality at a whim? Gaston comes off as just another face in the crowd, and yes, he is a minor character, but he is still one of the most important in all of Berserk. And that's why today I'm going to be talking about why Gaston is essential to Berserk and one of the most important characters in the series. We see Gaston make his first appearance in Berserk Volume 5, Episode 1, The Wind of Swords. In the 1997 anime adaptation of Berserk, Gaston is voiced by the legendary Sean Schemmel. If you don't know who this man is, he worked on a little indie anime series. You might even have heard of it. It's just a little anime called Dragon Ball. Sean Schemmel was the voice of Goku in Dragon Ball, one of the most world-renowned and prominent characters, not just in anime, but in media as a whole. It's quite evident that when you listen to Gaston's voice, the resemblance to Goku is clear. Just take a listen and you'll see what I mean.
That's not fair, and you know it!
I don't know about you, but to me that sounds exactly like something that Goku would say to Frieza back in Dragon Ball. It's pretty comical in a way how much Gaston sounds like Goku. Even the Berserk 1997 outtakes acknowledge this fact.
So, which one of you is Goku?
So we've covered that Goku and Gaston share the same voice actor. Now, let's look at Gaston's first appearance in The Wind of Swords. In this chapter, we see a battle unfold between two opposing forces, the army of Midland and Shooter. We learn there has been animosity harbored between these two different sides for generations, as this war has been ongoing for 100 years. During this time, the army of Midland has enlisted a prominent mercenary band known as the Band of the Hawk. And we all know the Band of the Hawk was instrumental to Midland's success in winning this war. In these early battles, we get to see a display of Guts' strength as he's out there kicking ass as per usual. But we the readers are not the only ones to notice how strong Guts truly is. Gaston also takes notice of this, and it's here we get to see his relationship with Guts start to bloom. Even a blind man could see that Gaston truly respected Guts and valued his leadership and prowess on the battlefield. Gaston's dialogue seen in this chapter speaks volumes about what type of a person he truly is. Just take a listen.
If I got a little carried away out there, I apologize. Apologize? What are you saying? Now we get to brag about you to everyone else!
Now these words on a surface level appear to be meaningless, perhaps a throwaway line. However, this couldn't be farther from the truth. In fact, these words are crucial to Gaston's character. What we can take away from this scene is that Gaston is a selfless man. He would rather hype up other people than himself. And I know that this dialogue might not seem like much, but it's a pivotal moment in establishing Gaston's character. If there's one thing worth taking away from Gaston's first appearance in Berserk, it's that he puts other people before himself, something many other characters in this series failed to do. Upon observing Gaston's first appearance, it's evident that he and Guts have a close bond to each other. But of all of the raiders in Guts' battalion, Gaston stood out as second in command, which shows that Guts valued him not just as a friend, but as a brother in arms. Gaston always had Guts' back and kept his best interest in mind many different times throughout the series. One of the most notable situations being when Gaston attempted to stop Guts before his encounter with Nosferatu Zod. And after seeing what Zod did to the rest of the Band of the Hawk members, I think Gaston was pretty justified in wanting Guts to wait for backup. Now you could also argue that Gaston, by holding Guts back, also saved his life from Zod. If Guts had entered this fortress even seconds earlier, then Zod would have killed Guts long before Griffith could come and save him. So Gaston, by holding Guts back, inadvertently saves his life from the hands of Zod. Because if Griffith had arrived even a second later, then Guts would be dead. This is indisputable, as Zod was literally wringing out Guts like a fucking wet towel. Now who do you think the person was that contacted Griffith for reinforcements in the first place? If I had to guess, I would put money on it being Gaston. After all, the man practically says it himself.
Ask Captain Griffith for reinforcements! If you contact Griffith, you'll die for it!
From this scene alone, we can tell that Gaston is both a reasonable and sensible man who cares for Guts deeply. And by no means is this the only scene where Gaston stands up for Guts. In the chapter Engagement, we see another battle unfold between the armies of Midland and Shooter. In this fight, Guts and Casca are both blindsided by a dawn and end up falling over a cliffside as a result. Both Gaston and Judo notice this and report the situation to Griffith right away. Gaston and Judo request that a search party should be sent out to look for both Guts and Casca. Some of the noblemen crowding around Griffith make light of the situation. They even laugh at the fact that both Guts and Casca might be dead. Once again, we see that Gaston doesn't hesitate to defend Guts. In this scene, Judo literally has to hold Gaston back so he doesn't make an uproar in front of the nobles. And this is just another example of Gaston's loyalty, which is so prevalent throughout the series. To Gaston, it doesn't matter if you're a noble, a king, or a god. If you're not Captain Guts, you ain't shit. It's also quite evident that Guts deeply cared for Gaston. This is revealed to us in Chapter 22, Volume 7 of Berserk's manga, titled Campfire of Dreams. In this scene, Guts praises Gaston, and he admires the fact that Gaston has his own dream that he's fighting for.
Gaston doesn't think he's very suited for army life. His intention is to start a tailoring business with the money he's earned when this war is over. He's very good with his hands, though he may not look it.
From this speech, we can assess that despite Gaston being a minor character in Berserk, he was still a man who held dreams and ambitions of his own. This dialogue does an amazing job of humanizing Gaston. It shows that Gaston had aspirations in life, and he had his own purpose for being in the Band of the Hawk. Despite Gaston seeming like a one-note character, there was actually a whole lot going on beneath his surface, and Guts was able to recognize this and see value in him, which goes to show the extent of their deep friendship. Now, as we've discussed, Gaston had his own dream and his own reason for being within the Band of the Hawk. However, Guts did not, which is one of the reasons why he left the Band of the Hawk in hopes to accomplish his own dream and become Griffith's equal. And when Guts returns to the Band of the Hawk, Gaston is brought to fucking tears. Even though Guts was gone for an entire year, Gaston runs up to him immediately and says this.
I knew it! I never stopped believing you'd come back someday!
I'm not gonna lie, this got me. This scene alone tells you everything that you need to know about Gaston and Guts' relationship. Gaston is so moved that he's brought to freaking tears, and Guts is smiling, one of the things we never see him do. But now, moving on to the main story. The remaining faction of the Band of the Hawk conducts a rescue mission to save Griffith from Midland's stronghold. The operation to rescue Griffith, while successful, reveals the fact that he's been crippled after a year of torture, and can no longer fight and lead the Band of the Hawk. At this point, the Band of the Hawk can hardly call itself an army. Its numbers are dwindling, and the men are in terrible health and poor spirits. And I bring this up because despite all of these terrible things and poor conditions, Gaston stayed with the Band of the Hawk. And in the chapter The Warriors of Twilight, we learn a crucial piece of information about Gaston. In this scene, Guts asks Gaston what his plans are regarding his clothing shop. Gaston responds to Guts by saying he can't go back to Wyndham, and he wouldn't anyway, because the Band of the Hawk is like family to him. He says, "I can't leave them." Wow, just wow, that's all I can say. Gaston, a minor character in Berserk, completely contradicts Griffith's ideology of sacrificing everything for a dream. Whereas Griffith sacrificed the Band of the Hawk for his dream, Gaston sacrificed his dream for the Band of the Hawk. This scene, oh man, it's so powerful, but it leaves me with a melancholy mood because I know what's about to happen to this character. But in this moment, Gaston, you got a hit out on Griffith. Gaston 1, Griffith 0. It's through Gaston's words that Guts has an epiphany about himself, where he's able to realize what's important to him. Gaston's words clearly impact Guts, and it's one of the last conversations they share together before Gaston's tragic death.
Perhaps this is what I was looking for one moment. But everything I wanted back then is right here before me now.
Gaston's Death. Oof, man, this one hurt me. Let's talk about it. So, the eclipse. It's been talked about thousands of times, and I've reread the manga and rewatched the anime more times than I can count, and it still fucks me up every time. The images used are absolute nightmare fuel, and let me make it clear, the Band of the Hawk, none of them deserved this, but Gaston's death felt especially tragic to me. Now try to picture this next scene from Guts' perspective. There you are, fighting demons in the literal darkest depths of hell, only to fall into a pool of blood made up from the remainder of your friend's body parts. But in the midst of all this horror and bloodshed, Guts turns around to see a glimmer of hope. Being in the center of all of this, he somehow still survived and managed to outrun some of the apostles. How he did this, I have no idea. But regardless of how Gaston survived, Guts is extremely relieved to see him, and he cradles him in his arms. And at this point, Gaston proceeds to break the fourth wall. He recounts upon his time in the Band of the Hawk, and says that maybe it was all a dream. He says that the Band of the Hawk was too grand and too vivid for a regular guy like him. For Gaston, some of the victory parties seemed to be somber, as if there was something else going on. When he opened his eyes, it seemed everything had vanished. And in Gaston's final moments, with his last breath, he proceeds to say, "Looks like I'm just a minor character." And after this, Gaston looks up at Guts one final time before his head explodes into the four fucking winds. Not only that, but the apostle that kills Gaston escapes as well. And all I could say when I first watched this was, are you kidding me? Gaston did nothing wrong throughout the entire run-through of Berserk, and yet his head got blown into orbit. It's bad enough that Gaston had to die, but the way in which he was killed, identifying him as a minor character and just blowing his head off. Gaston might have been a minor character, but he had his own role within the story, and he served it well. You deserved better, buddy. So, what's the takeaway from Gaston's character? Overall, do we gain anything from his presence in the series? And the answer to this may be subjective, and it might even surprise you. If you were a casual manga reader, you could entirely dismiss Gaston's character and forget his presence within Berserk's series. However, if you look into Gaston's appearances, you'll soon start to see the role that he plays within the series. Gaston may not be important to the readers, but he is important to Guts, and this matters. Gaston and Guts drank together, they gambled together, and they fought together. Gaston and Guts have such an underrated friendship, and I don't think it's talked about enough. In the chapter The Sprint, which takes place right after the eclipse, Guts goes berserk and ends up running through the woods trying to comprehend what just happened. And one of the first people that Guts thinks of is none other than Gaston. Gaston gives us a character that we want to avenge. While he is a minor character, he still serves his role well, and is a brick that helped pave the path to make Berserk one of the best manga of all time.